Hi, thanks for stopping by Grains in Small Places, and today we're going to be doing popovers. So a lot of you have been asking for this one for a while, so I hope you give these a try. You could do them savory or sweet, whichever way you prefer. So I will make sure to put this recipe down in the description box below, and it'll be on my blog at grainsinsmallplaces.net. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, to get started with the popovers, you want to use I'm using a muffin tin. You could use a popover tin, but you may get smaller popovers because this one's kind of made for 6 of the muffin tin size. And this recipe can be doubled if you want to make 12, but I do recommend not using a non-stick, just because this needs to go into a preheat at a really high heat oven. It could warp your pan. So these are stainless steel and I really like these. I will make sure to link these down below, but also I'll link all the other things that you see me using, like my mixer, the blender, my grain wheat berries that hold the wheat berries in, all of the things. I get questions a lot about all of the things, so I try to link those down in the description box below. But I do recommend putting your muffin tin on top of another baking sheet, just in case they happen to spill out any of the butter or batter or anything like that, because these are popovers, so they do come over the top. So we're gonna go ahead and place this in the oven empty and preheat our oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. And then that way, this will be nice and hot when we go to put the butter and then the batter in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and preheat this empty pan, and we'll go ahead and be back to measure out the wheat berries. These are gonna bake at 450 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 to 20 minutes or so. Then without opening the oven, you're gonna turn that temperature down to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and bake for another about 10 minutes or so. But make sure the whole time you don't want to open the oven. If you open the oven, they'll deflate or they won't rise. So make sure you keep that oven closed and the heat stays in there. Okay, so for the wheat berries, you want to make sure you're using a soft white wheat. This will work with like oat flour or barley flour, anything that doesn't develop gluten. You don't want the gluten to develop, so you don't want to use anything that could develop that, because it will make it tough. So I really highly recommend a soft white wheat. We're going to use 120 grams. So I'm just going to weigh that out, and then that will give me 120 grams of the flour as well. I'll make sure to put a link in the description box below to this recipe. I'll have it in weight and in volume for you, but I do always recommend weight if you can, because it's a little bit more accurate. Somehow I went way over there. Okay, 121, we'll take that. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take this on over to my mill. Today I'm using the Nutrimill Classic Grain Mill. I have been loving this mill ever since I got it. It makes the nicest, finest flour. Right now you can save $20 off if you're interested in this mill by using the coupon code GRAINY, and I'll put that in the description box below as well. Okay, and here is that nice, fine flour. It's just super fine and beautiful. So when you're using this mill, you always want to make sure to kind of tap off the excess flour and empty out this cup. All of the impact mills have some kind of a cup. This one is larger than like the small impact mill, but I believe like the Wonder Mill and everything have this little cup that needs emptied. This is your finer flour, but I just empty it in with the rest of my flour. And the grain mills that are stone mill don't have the cup. This is kind of just an impact mill thing. But we're gonna go ahead and add our salt to this flour. And we're gonna be using my favorite salt, this Baja Gold Mineral Sea Salt. I have been loving this for all of my baking and cooking and everything. I do have a coupon code where you can save on your order through Baja Gold, or you can pick this up through Azure, and maybe even, we're preheated, maybe even Amazon as well. But I have a coupon code for you if you wanna order directly from Baja Gold. I will put that down in the description box below as well. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is grab our blender attachment. Now, you do not have to use a blender, but I found that with using the blender helps make this nice and airy, and it does a really good job. So you can use a bowl and just whisk it really vigorously. That's kind of how we do my Dutch baby recipe, but this is also fantastic for like the Dutch babies, anything that you have to whisk vigorously. And that's another reason you want to make sure that you're using a wheat that is not high in gluten or doesn't develop gluten really easily. Otherwise you could get a tough dough. This is something that with soft white wheat, you can pretty much mix it as much as you want and it's not going to develop the gluten, which is why it makes for not a great bread. So we're going to go ahead and just dump this into here. Let's see if I can do this without making a mess. Okay, and while Nutrimill was having their sale, they went ahead and sent me this blender attachment so I could give it a try. So what I'm gonna do here is go ahead and add my milk into here. You can use milk or buttermilk. If you're dairy free, you could use water here, but it might not give you the richness and the taste that you want. So a milk substitute or coconut milk or something like that might be a better option. Okay, we're gonna use 180 grams. It's like about 3/4 of a cup. But went a little bit over, that should be fine. Okay. I'll move this over. Gonna go ahead and do 2 eggs. Okay, and that's gonna go ahead and go on in. Okay, and then I'm gonna put the lid on and then grab my Bosch mixer, which is what this blender attachment goes to. Put it on the wrong way. This is, I actually like this because it took me a minute to learn it, but it slides on like this as opposed to popping on and off. So I'm gonna just set this up here and grab the mixer. Okay. Make sure you can see that. Okay, so this is where our mixing bowl would normally go. Like it goes here. But this is where the blender attachment goes. So you can see there that little cover comes off. Okay, and this goes on here. And it gives a little click when you spin it into place. Let me move that so you can see better. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead and turn it on. Okay, and I think I probably should have put the liquid in before the flour. Just thought about that. So if you put the liquid in first, you probably wouldn't need to scrape down the sides, but I had some dry flour that I could see in there that got stuck in there. Okay, let's try that again. Alrighty, nice and blended. So let me go ahead and move this. Then you want this batter to sit for just a couple minutes to let that flour start absorbing the moisture, which typically you can do while your oven preheats. And then I have 3 tablespoons of butter about here. And since we have 6 wells, what I'm gonna do is cut this into 6 close to equal parts and have it nice and ready to go as soon as I pull my pan out, because we want to keep the pan hot. So I'm gonna have 6 pieces of butter and I'm gonna put that in the hot pan. Set that up here. So one of the tricks to this whole recipe is having a very hot pan to put your batter into. So we're just going to put the butter. It's okay. It should sound kind of like it's frying in there. Okay. And I want to give this just a little swirl around. And I'm going to just pop this back in the oven for like 30 seconds to melt this butter completely. Okay, so the butter is nice and melted. You got to be really careful doing this. This is very hot. So what I'm going to do next is, now that everything is absorbed in here and the butter's hot and the pan's hot, I'm just going to fill these about 3/4 of the way up, not all the way. And if you don't end up using all the batter, that's fine. That just means that you may have had like an extra large egg or something. But this should use most of the batter. But you don't want to fill these all the way up. So I do have a tiny bit left. But you don't want to top these off because they're going to end up kind of exploding out. So you could get another pan and make them after you preheat it if you want to do that. But my wells on these muffin pans are a little bit small. But these are going into the hot oven. If you see this dripping, this is what I meant about keeping the pan underneath, because you can see the dripping. I'm not opening my oven, but you can see that dripping down there, so it keeps the bottom of the oven cleaner. Okay, and this is what they should look like when you turn the temperature down to the 350. You want to make sure that they're starting to pop out just like this and starting to brown on the top. Then you can lower your temperature down and then cook for 10 more minutes, but don't open that oven. Okay, here they are. And this is what they look like just right before they came out of the oven. So we did get a little bit of butter spillage on here, so I'm glad we put that tray under there. And I'm gonna go ahead and try to put these out while they're still warm, but it's only been a couple seconds and you can see they're already starting to deflate. So you want to make sure that you enjoy these when they are nice and hot and fresh. So I hope this was fun for you. It's really fun to see these rise in the oven, and then when you bring them out of the oven, how tall they've gotten, and then they do collapse pretty quickly, but pretty fun idea, something great that the kids might like to watch. So you can find that recipe on my blog at grainsandsmallplaces.net. I will also put a link down in the description box below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends, and thanks for stopping by Grains and Small Places. Goodbye.